So it's another typical day. You're driving down the road or maybe even running some errands. All of a sudden your engine acts up or your car won't go into gear. You start coasting. You pull over, you can't figure what's going on, so you call a tow truck and have them tow it to a shop. The mechanic tells you that there was no oil in the transmission and your transmission was blown. Or just as worse, there was no oil in your car and you blew your engine. There's a lot of reasons why this could happen. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the signs that you should be looking for to prevent a catastrophe like this. There's a lot of reasons why your engine or transmission would run out of oil or run low on oil, but if you're waiting for your check engine light to tell you if you're low on oil or transmission fluid, well, as you know, 9 times out of 10, it's too late. Most of the time, if you're aware, the car is telling you that there is a problem. You don't need any special equipment to find out this information. What you want to do is you want to look under your car. Are there any leaks on your driveway? Any spots? Any oil spots? Well, obviously, if your driveway has a lot of oil spots, it's going to be hard to tell if there's any fresh new ones on there. But if you notice at work where you usually park, you may or may not see an oil spot there. Or at a parking lot at a department store. Either way, look on the ground. See if your car is leaking any fluids or oils. If you do see a leak, how do you determine what kind of a leak it is? Well, one of the things you can quickly do is to go on the internet. There's a lot of charts on there that you can decipher. But the best thing you can do is take out your dipstick. The end of your dipstick will have some oil on it. Just dab it on a paper towel and look at the color. Get familiar with it. Notice it's a little brown in color. Dip your dipstick back in and pull it out and feel the oil. Feel the texture of the oil in your fingers. Do the same thing with your transmission dipstick. Put some transmission fluid on a paper towel. Look at the color, feel the oil, feel the texture. Smell it. Become one with the oil. You and the oil will become one. The oil is your friend. I'm just kidding. The point I'm trying to make is get familiar with your fluids. Like the power steering fluid. Notice it's fairly clear. It's got a little yellow tinge to it. I'm not kidding. Feel the oil. You'll feel the differences in the oil and the viscosity. Do this with your brake fluid, your antifreeze, your windshield wiper fluid. That way you know what these fluids look, smell, and feel like. No, I didn't say taste. The point is you want to be able to recognize what these fluids look like when they land on your driveway. Once you recognize the type of fluid that's on the floor, you'll be able to pinpoint what system you're having the problem with. But today we're going to talk about how to inspect and repair your motor oil and your automatic transmission oil cooler line fittings that connect to your radiator tanks. Now typically if those fittings leak, if you stand in front of your car, if you notice a puddle on the left side and it's red in color, that's the side your transmission cooler lines are at. This is what it looks like if it lands on your driveway. It's kind of reddish looking. And if you see a puddle approximately on the right side there, that dark puddle, that's the side your oil cooler lines connect into your radiator. And this is what motor oil looks like when it lands on your driveway. A very dark, black looking fluid. Now let's look inside to see possibly where these leaks are coming from. Pretend we're the motor and we're looking towards the radiator. As you can see, we have some red arrows. The fittings on the left are for your oil cooler lines. The fittings on the right are the fittings for your transmission coolant lines. All 4 of these fittings have O-rings, and of course, just like everything else, they wear down and could possibly leak. These fittings are removable and they kind of look like this once you have them removed. I want to say there's 2 O-rings on this, but by the time you find the O-rings, it's a lot cheaper just to buy this whole unit. They run anywhere from $3 to $4 to as high as $19. You can find them all day long for $4 or $5 each. Another thing you're going to want to know is that the fittings on the left are larger than the fittings on the right, so be aware of that. It's pretty easy to see if these fittings are leaking. Of course, you'll see the leak on your driveway. Once you determine which side it's leaking from, you'll be able to pinpoint which fitting is leaking. Now, depending on which fitting is leaking, the upper fittings are easier to get to, but if it's leaking from the bottom, you may or may not want to consider removing the fan. it's real easy to take off. I'm not going to show you on this video, but if you do want to take off the fan, go to this video up here, and in that repair I'll show you how to take off the fan and what you need to do. It's really simple. Just click above on the right hand corner. Well, today I'm going to show you how to take off this radiator hose and how to remove the fitting to replace it. Once you know how to do those two, you can do them on the rest of the three if you want. Now here's something you may want to think about. These fittings aren't that expensive. You may want to consider, since you got the radiator fan off, just replace all four of them. You'll have peace of mind. Unless you instruct your mechanic, he's only going to fix what's broken. He's not going to replace all four of them. Okay, here we're looking at the driver's side, and where the red arrow's at is our upper oil cooler line. And where the arrow's at is the fitting. Now you can try to remove this fitting with that radiator hose above, but it's a lot easier to remove it. That way you have easy access to remove the fitting. You'll see what I mean here in a second. Now to remove this hose, you need to remove this clamp. This clamp takes a special tool. This is a tool that you can find at Walmart for about 13 bucks. This tool will remove this clamp. If you don't have that tool, use this NASCAR tool, pair of vice grips. Remember, these radiator tanks are plastic, and so are some of the plastic fittings, so be careful when you're tugging and pulling. You don't want to crack anything, otherwise you'll have to buy a whole new radiator. FYI, if you have to buy a new radiator, all four fittings come in already pre-installed for about 250 bucks. Once you have the clamp out of the way, go ahead and remove the hose. Now we're going to go on the driver's side, and we're going to remove the upper oil cooler line. First, we're going to remove this plastic cover. Then what I used was 2 picks from Harbor Freight and remove the clip. Be very careful, this clip will snap and you'll lose it. They're somewhat hard to find, but you can buy them, so try not to lose them. Now we can gently tug and remove our oil cooling line. There'll be a little oil that drips out, but just make sure you have your drip pan underneath in position. When you pull on the line, you'll feel it pop out. You want to make sure when you put the line back in that it snaps or pops in. You'll feel it. Now what you're going to do is you're going to take a 25 millimeter socket. I think it's 25 millimeters if I remember correctly. 25 millimeter for your oil fittings, and I believe it's 19 millimeters for your transmission fittings. Once you remove this fitting, you can now go to the parts store and get a new part. Now you know how to take off the radiator hoses and remove your cooler line fittings. Here's something else you want to know. Right where the red arrow's at, typically with these GM radiators, the plastic radiator where it holds this fitting will fail right here. If you watch a lot of YouTubes, a lot of mechanics will say that for some reason the radiators fail right here. I guess it has something to do with the engineering, how they fuse the fitting to the plastic tank. Now if you look below, you'll see the other oil cooling line. If your fitting is leaking from the bottom, that's where it's going to be at. Now, when you go to the passenger side, you'll notice the same thing is going on. There's a hose on the very top that you want to remove. And below that, we have the transmission cooling line going into the fitting, just like the driver's side. They come off the same way, just like you did on the driver's side. Again, the transmission fittings are smaller than the oil fittings. Now, if this line doesn't look like it's leaking, look below. There's the other transmission line. Check around the fittings there to see if it's leaking from there. And of course, if you need to remove it, it comes apart the same way. So since you're down there eyeballing that area, inspect these 2 hoses here. See if there's any signs of cracks or leaking. If you have to remove these hoses to access that line, go ahead. Just make sure you have a drip pan on the bottom. Now that you have your replacement part, we can now go ahead and install it in the radiator. Go ahead and screw it in and tighten it up with your socket. Now we're ready to, on the driver's side, install our upper oil cooler line. You just snap it in, you'll feel it snap in. Then you install the clip. Then slide your protective cover over it. Now we can install the hose on top of it. Go ahead and put your clamp back into place. At this point, top off any fluids that are low. Don't forget to burp your cooling system to make sure there's no air in your lines. Now you can go ahead and start your car, let it warm up, and just check for any leaks. Look on the bottom and see if there's any leaks. And if you don't have any leaks, you did a good job. You're all done. See how easy that was? Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe, and of course hit the bell. Until then, we'll see you at my next video. Bye!
at the stars, up at the stars. I'm caught inside a loop where I can get to your heart, get to your heart. Ooh, you're letting your fears take hold, let them take control, and it's making me crazy. If you could only look at me, you know how I feel, know how I feel. Oh, see how much I want it, see how bad I need it. You gotta look into my eyes. That's how much I want it, that's how bad I need it. You gotta look into my eyes. Think twice before you let me go. My eyes are mirrors of my soul. See how much I want it, see how bad I need it. You gotta look into my eyes. Look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into my eyes. Look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into my eyes. I'm dancing on the tables, trying my best to forget, best to forget. Ooh, there's no one coming into my eyes. Look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into my eyes. Look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into, look into my eyes. I'm dancing on the tables, trying my best to forget, best to forget. Ooh, and no one coming through the door is your silhouette, your silhouette. Oh, see how much I want it, see how bad I need it. You gotta look into my eyes. That's how much I want it.